this thought the other day about the culture of sports cards, and I wanted to share this thought with you. So I just moved back to the US after being away for 17 years. I just moved back less than 2 years ago, and there's cultural things that like I forgot about that I've had to kind of relearn. And one of them, this kind of like clique culture of different bubbles of people who kind of connect to each other based on like political ideology, based on interest, based on different things. But it's almost like there's less of a feel of one overarching culture, and there's more of a feel of a bunch of disconnected bubbles kind of spread out. And even like the algorithms feed this type of cultural approach. You know, if you are really into something, whatever it is, and you're on a YouTube or X or whatever it might be, like the algorithm feeds you more of that stuff you've already shown an interest in, to the point where it's like this echo chamber. Like the only things that you hear in those spaces are other people who are interested in those same spaces or have those same ideas that you've expressed interest in previously. And I've noticed that in the US, but part of it makes sense. Part of it is like, yes, you find your tribe, you find people who you're interested in. And part of it is there's an extreme divisiveness that happens in this country that I knew about when I wasn't living here. But it's also a little jarring once you're back in it again and after you've been out of it for a long time, like the hyper politicalization of everything and kind of the divisiveness of, you know, especially when it comes to politics. It's just so crazy. But the hyper divisiveness in those spaces has an effect on a lot of other things in the culture, and even an effect on kind of the perception people have towards others when they first meet somebody, you know, based on just base things, based on the clothes they might wear or the accent in their voice or where they happen to be from or whatever. Like there's so many like jump to conclusions, jump to perception about who this person is in this country. It's insane. I have noticed in the sports card world is that it's one of the few places that I've been able to find that has a diversity of people, from a diversity of perspectives, from all walks of life, from rich to poor, from Republican to Democrat, to people with a lot of different ideas, but who are all engaged in this space, and they don't even all have the same reasons. I mean, you know, some people might be trying to make money, some people might be collecting, some people might be trying to connect with other people and build community. You have people who are connected in these spaces with all sorts of reasons. You know, in a lot of other bubbles, it tends to be people of like-minded backgrounds, people of similar kind of cultural ideologies, people who have the same underlying assumptions about the way the world works, or about the same prejudices, the same biases. You know, a lot of it in America is kind of like this echo chamber. These bubbles become echo chambers. But in sports cards, I feel it transcends that a little bit. Not that sports cards are so amazing, it's going to transcend our divisiveness, but just it tends to pull people who are not necessarily having other spaces in life to engage with each other. Which I think is actually an extremely valuable thing, especially at this phase in history in our country where there's this extreme divisiveness. I think things like sports cards, not only sports cards, there's lots of other spaces. You know, I'm not going to dedicate my own personal community building efforts to sports cards alone, because I think it's not the way to solve the world's problems and to try to build stronger unity in our communities. It's not the way, but I do feel like it is a way, and it is one space where there is a variety of people who are coming together and who can connect on something and can build relationships, authentic relationships with each other. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. I love being able to connect with anyone. You know, I feel like it's something that I value, and that I feel that there is an underlying value among a large number of people on wanting to build authentic connections with people, even who have different ideas than you. Because how do you ever move forward collectively without building authentic relationships with people who have diverse ideas? When people begin to, from any perspective, when they begin to like other the other side, when they begin to think of it as us and them, or an othering of things, like it's just becomes clouded with prejudices and preconceived notions of who that other person is and what they believe and how they engage with the world, and that just becomes, it's like a caricature of that person instead of an authentic person. It creates the culture that we have of this extreme division. So I love being able to try to build community within the sports card world. I love being able to try to build an authentic relationship with somebody who might have a completely different idea than me. I feel like it's just something there's something missing in our culture as far as clear places to build relationships with people who have diverse understandings of things. And I feel like at this stage, one of the biggest ways I can do that is by finding spaces to build unity in a divided world. The current social order of things seems so fragile and so rooted in division that it's not healthy. It doesn't help anybody, and it doesn't help us progress forward. It doesn't help in anything. It's lending to this kind of cycle of depression, this cycle of cynicism, this cycle of hopelessness, this cycle of like where people have become disconnected from each other, from culture, from community. And once the divide is really strong, like you need spaces, multiple spaces all the time where people from diverse backgrounds, people with diverse beliefs can come together and can build authentic relationships. Because some of those things that are rooted in ignorance, you can't make those disappear by just disengaging. You can only make those things disappear by a stronger force of love. And by a stronger force of authentic connection. Those are the things that can eventually help some of those bigger problems to be overcome. Any space can be that. You know, it could be a neighborhood block party, you know, a knitting club. You know, this is something we've been thinking about with my wife. She's been getting into crochet. It's just a little neck warmer thing she made recently. And we know of a couple neighbors who are into crochet, and we have this 13-year-old homeschooled kid just down the road who's really into it. And so we've been just thinking, like, how cool would it be to have a knitting night? Like, just to be able to build unity within our neighborhood, to build connection, to build a sense of community in a place where, you know, it seems like community is getting lost in kind of hyper individualism. And I think the sports card space is already kind of set up to naturally lend itself to that. It's set up, trading nights at a local card shop, I think it's set up as a space for people to be able to connect with each other, have conversations with each other, get to know each other in an authentic way, which is something that I think is missing in society in a lot of ways. People don't necessarily have an easy step into those spaces. So if sports cards and a sports card show, a sports card shop, one of the podcasts I was listening to the other day on the Sports Card Nonsense channel, there was one where Jesse Gibson was doing an interview with like a sports card shop owner in his hometown, and I just loved the way this guy was talking about his sports card shop, because it was all about like, yes, he is trying to make money. I mean, he has a business, he has to make some money to at least survive and everything, but ultimately what he's trying to do is create a community hub of sorts. And that's so beautiful to me, because I think that it's something that's missing in this culture. And when you step out of the country, actually, you know, that's the first time when, you know, I feel like you can really see if you're away for a long period of time, it becomes much more clear, the goods and the bads. When you're here, sometimes depending on your mindset, the goods are either amplified and magnified so big, or the bads are amplified so big. When you're out of the country for a long period of time, I feel like you can see the reality of it a little bit more clearly. And then once now that I've been back in it again for 2 years and understanding some of the nuance of it a little bit more, like I feel like I'm coming to deeper understandings of America that I never understood before. The goods and the bads, and it's full. It's the land of lights and shadows is how I would describe it. Some beautiful, beautiful things and some ugly, ugly things, both in that space. But I feel like one of the things that really is missing, deeply missing, is community spaces. And I don't think people even realize how uncommon that is compared to other places in the world. You know, living in China, you know, we would have in our neighborhood apartment complex, for example, down at the little center area where there's like the kids' playground area and like a little store and like some open space. Every single evening, the older people in the apartment complex would be down there dancing. There would be dancing every night. There would be kids who were roller skating around. You know, the families are connecting with each other. It's just part of life. Like, community is just part of life. It's expected. It's valued, and people recognize its value, and they prioritize it. And community was just part of life. And I don't think we are, you know, when you're in America and you're always in America, I don't think necessarily you realize how odd it is that there's not these community spaces. The purpose of this video is for us just to have this thought about the value of creating community within the sports card world and how essential that is. On the one hand, maybe our engagement with the hobby is just however transactional. We're buying and selling things. You know, we're trying to make some money. Like, there's transactional things about it. But I think the underlying thing that's gonna keep the hobby growing, that's gonna keep the hobby vibrant, that's gonna keep people loving the hobby, is how do we foster that sense of community. And I feel that that's really up to each of us. You know, that's another thing that's a concept that seems to be common in a lot of cultures, is this waiting for somebody else to do the work and that you become a participant. But I feel like one of the things that we need to be able to learn is how we become the protagonists, how we become the ones who can build the spaces that encourage connection between people, that encourage community building. You know, we can't just wait for others to do it and then we participate in it, because then we'll just be waiting. You know, you can't just rely only on others' individual initiative. You have to have your own. How do you go out and reach and build those connections? And, you know, how do you strengthen a sense of community within the spaces that you're engaged with? And if you're watching this video, I assume that one of the spaces you're engaged with is sports cards in some way or another. Like, what is it we can do to strengthen community within this space? That's a question I've left for you. I feel like my YouTube channel is one of those things for me, like, that I'm trying to do to engage in a community space, is having these conversations. I'm trying to, I'm not necessarily an outgoing guy, but when I go to a sports card show or when I go to a sports card shop, I like to engage in conversations with the shop owners, other people who might be looking at similar cards to what I'm looking at, like, just to have a sense of being able to build some sort of connection with other people that I wouldn't otherwise have a chance to. Maybe think about that too. When you go to a sports card show or when you go to a sports card shop, like, what are we doing to strengthen this sense of unity? You know, how can we create an environment where we can actually use this as a space of building community and building authentic relationships among a diversity of people? I don't have the answers, but I just think this is a lot of, like, very valuable questions to think about, and for us to think about, like, how we engage with our world around us, not only in relation to this, but in relation to everything that we are part of. Anyway, I've been having some rambling videos. I hope this is useful to you. I could talk about this sort of thing a lot, but I don't know if the YouTube algorithm necessarily feeds this kind of video to a lot of people. So if you are watching this, please do hit the like button and make some comments down there. I think it would be nice if this type of video was getting a little bit more view. I've made videos like this in the past, and they've always been the ones that don't get nearly as many watchers. So make some comment, engage with this one. I feel like this is the type of conversation that should be a little bit more common. It doesn't have to be the only conversation in sports cards. There's lots of things to talk about, but I do feel like this is one that kind of gets swept under the rug, or that could use more space for talking in our various discourses around sports cards. So anyway, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.